And in New York today, they're talking about peace and security. Yes, in light of all the events and the truth about who exactly is behind the armed conflicts and sabotage of recent decades, it sounds more than strange and even mocking. Nevertheless, that's where the UN headquarters is, and today marks the start of the high-level week. Biden's jokes and quips, along with those of his ardent supporters, couldn't turn everything into a farce once again. Many world leaders are seriously concerned. The world stands on the brink of a nuclear catastrophe. And jokes are entirely inappropriate here. Tomorrow there will be a UN Security Council meeting dedicated to the sabotage of the Nord Streams. The key event is considered to be the general debates of world leaders. Yana Mendeleeva investigated what is being said from the podium in New York.
A vast battlefield. The high-level week of the 79th session of the UN General Assembly has begun in New York at a time when the global situation has reached a boiling point. Over 130 heads of state and more than 100 foreign ministers have gathered to discuss conflict prevention and resolution. Traditionally, the general debates of world leaders are considered the key event. For Joe Biden, the speech was largely a farewell. He stated that thanks to the USA, Ukraine is not destroyed, and NATO is stronger than before. His monologue also included a joke about his own age.
I witnessed remarkable historical development. I was first elected as a senator from 5 American states in 1972. I know I look 40. I know that.
Western media reacted to the latest speech of the 46th President of the USA. The New York Post dedicated a cover with the headline, "The Mess They Left Behind," for this purpose. In his UN speech, Biden tries to sow global chaos. CNN writes that Biden used his last speech to praise the virtues of democracy, but offered nothing substantial on resolving the escalating Middle East crisis. Journalists from the Washington Post note that Biden's characteristic optimism sounded discordant against the backdrop of disappointment and gloom prevailing at the UN. This tone was set by Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who lamented the absence of red lines maintained by the USA and USSR during the Cold War, even in the darkest moments of rivalry.
Geopolitical disagreements continue to deepen. The planet keeps heating up, wars rage, and it's unknown how they will end. The rattling of nuclear weapons and new types of armaments cast a dark shadow. We are approaching the unimaginable, a powder keg that risks engulfing the world.
Conflicts in Ukraine and the Middle East have brought humanity to the brink of nuclear catastrophe, believes the leader of Serbia. Vučić pointed out the double standards in approaches to international law.
When major leaders here passionately and fervently speak about the need for Ukraine's freedom, about adhering to the UN, its charter and resolutions, I ask myself, why don't they adhere to the UN Charter and Resolution 1244 when it comes to Serbia's territorial integrity, which was violated as a result of their own actions? They thought they could violate international law and norms as they wished, to the extent they wanted, and for as long as they wanted.
Ahead of participating in the 79th session of the UN General Assembly, Russia's foreign minister also pointed out that the West has long moved from dialogue to microphone diplomacy in the UN Security Council.
When it was necessary to punish Russia, all the principles that the West fed us and which they assured us were sacred to them were trampled. The same goes for the principles of the UN Charter.
The president of Turkey, speaking about the Ukrainian conflicts, stated that Ankara advocates for ending the war through diplomacy based on Ukraine's territorial integrity and sovereignty. However, most of his speech was devoted to the problems of Palestine and criticizing Israel.
Just as 70 years ago, the Alliance of Humanity stopped Hitler, now with the same collective efforts it must stop Netanyahu and his gang of murderers.
The president of Iran also called from the UN General Assembly podium to immediately stop Israel's barbarism. The situation in the Middle East remains extremely tense. The IDF reported that this morning, a single rocket from Lebanon was intercepted over Tel Aviv. In the past 24 hours, Hezbollah has launched about 300 rockets at the state. Almost all were intercepted in the air. New data on casualties from the IDF attack on Lebanon is emerging. As a result of the strikes, 2 Canadian citizens and 2 UN employees were killed. Syrian air defenses repelled an Israeli attack on targets near Tartus overnight. The flames of conflicts are flaring up on the planet, and the organizations meant to prevent them are in no hurry to extinguish them. Yana Mendeleeva, Mikhail Drukov, First Information.